Hello and welcome to week 5 of your curriculum instruction and assessment course. We're talking about effective questioning and formative techniques. So first on our agenda is looking at questioning strategies, then formative and summative assessments, and then using those assessments to drive instruction. So really looking at how to talk to students in a questioning and see if they're understanding. So first is effective questioning. So effective questions are ones that cause students to become engaged in the learning process. The chain of events when teacher solicits a question form or a response form to the students respond, and then the teacher reacts to students' answer, which is called structure, soliciting, and reacting. So think about whenever you are asking a question, and this could be day-to-day life, anytime, your tone and your inflection and your word emphasis really changes how a student might answer or somebody might answer. Because you could think about, are you supposed to do that? That changes are you supposed to do that? And you can tell that, somebody's about to get in trouble, opposed to the second way of just kind of questioning. So your tone, your inflection really emphasizes how the students might respond. All right, question purpose. So all of these are the purposes of why are we questioning students? There's a huge discussion right now in schools of, these students are being tested so much, blah, blah, blah. But these are more of questions of you asking throughout. My in-person people know that I ask questions a lot during class because I want you talking so that models that you should be questioning and having answers all throughout the day with your students. So interest getting or attention getting. So in our in-person class and even in my 5th grade classroom, I ask questions to start basically each lesson somehow, some way. And just to grab their attention, just to grab that prior knowledge, and it just helped them to be engaged. Diagnosing and checking. That's when you're just seeing if they're understanding. Recall specific facts or information. And that could be what happened on the playground, or that could be actual content information. Managing. Okay, and that goes back to, what are you supposed to be doing? And that's trying to see if they're on the right track or not, meaning behavior-wise. And then encouraging high-level thought process. So really expanding on, do they know it surface level? And then expanding on it. So why did you use the black paper instead of the white paper when making your solar oven? So really trying to dig deep into, do they understand the concepts? Structuring and redirecting learning. That can go into trying to scaffold what comes next. So if you're doing long division, right? After we divide, then we have to multiply. And then allowing expression of affection. Very similar, but just seeing how they're doing. All right, there's 2 different types of questions. So one is very direct and closed, and then divergent, which is indirect or open. Oftentimes, if you are trying to use an attention getting strategy, you want it to be divergent so that you start that conversation. I often use divergent questions just because it allows more students to respond, and they're able to take what they hear, bring in their own perspective, and it just helps that cognitive learning. Divergent or convergent is great, but I just like the more open to allow them to have that creativity, and analysis. Okay. Now we're looking at student questioning during collaboration. This is a great time for students to ask questions, for you to give a question and then they have to respond to it in turn and talk. So that you might put up on the board a question and then ask them, turn and talk. What do you think? This gives them ownership of their learning, but also allows them to have a voice. I think pair of share is very similar. You just take that moment beforehand, pause, let them collect their thoughts, and then they pair, and then you kind of share out. We do that a lot in our in-person class. Group work, again, you just have to make sure that you monitor those students and don't just sit at your desk and here you go. Making sure that they are on task and asking those questions. Why are we doing it this way? What about if we did this? All of those questions to help enhance that learning. Pre-write, you can have them jot down. Thought jot is kind of the same thing. And all of these are in your textbook. But having them have that time to show their understanding of a concept. Exit slips are usually at the end of a lesson. And that's where you give, those can be either open-ended or closed, and it just monitors what they're learning. And then peer review, that's usually after group work or partner work of just seeing how the students performed. And you can use that for an evaluation. We kind of talked about that a few weeks ago. All right, levels of questioning. I remember when I was in college, we spent a lot of time on this. And that's because many teachers stick to the bottom level of questioning, remembering and understanding, which is not always great. It's great that the students understand and can identify or infer or discuss, but we need to bring it to the next level of implying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. All of these things really further their knowledge of understanding a concept. So instead of just saying, what is the skeletal system? They might have to build one, create it. If they are able to create, that's basically the highest level of understanding. So when you start to get into those sort of things, their academic success skyrockets. So while yes, you still want to ask these questions of remembering and understanding, but you need to also put in these higher level of questions so that you make sure that they understand all of the concept. On their end of grade tests or EOC, end of course tests, most of the questions are not at that remembering stage. It's much more at the applying, analyzing, evaluating part. You can't do creating, but they're at that upper level, so they have to understand how to use that application. Probing. I love to use this in the classroom just because the students are still taking ownership. There's 3 different types of probing. So the first is asked to seek clarification of students' response. So maybe you're not understanding what they're saying or it's kind of misleading, just making sure that you have that. Soliciting probe is asking for new information after a partially correct response. And then redirect probe, restructuring a discussion to get students back on track. Redirecting, you will probably use a lot, but this still gives the students ownership of what are you supposed to be doing or what is your task. They're able to answer that, and then usually they get back on track. Now, you might have some students that don't, but oftentimes they will get back on track just because they're able to answer their own and take ownership. Next, we are going to talk about wait time. Wait time as a beginning teacher is one of the hardest things to do. So wait time is after you give a question, you wait, you pause. And there were times, my first and second year, I literally had to count in my head before I would either rephrase the question or I would just restate the question. So wait time is pausing to give students time to think and develop their answer before just jumping right into the other thing. Often teachers that don't give that wait time, it's because their classroom management might go a little sideways or array, or they're nervous about that. That's what I was thinking. Oh, if they don't answer, or if I leave too much dead space or dead time after my question, students are going to get off task and all that. Well, most of the time they're still developing their question or just need a few minutes. But that wait time is really important. And usually about 3 to 5 seconds is that wait time, because it will also give time for students that are a little hesitant that they might chime in and give their answer, because that kind of awkward silence plays to your benefit. So wait time is very important. Types of assessments. So there's 2 different types, formative and summative. Formative occurs during instruction. So that could be just asking, does that make sense? Or just any sort of kind of way to indicate if you are teaching effectively or ineffectively. And based on those results, you can kind of pivot and be like, all right, I need to re-explain this. We see that all day, every day, basically, in the classroom. I would always ask, before I would release my students into group work or partner work or whatever, I would say, does that make sense? Do we have any questions? Just to ensure. And that's a formative assessment. You can also be walking around and, all right, this student understands this sort, or they don't. Or you're able to see really quick where those students are. Now, summative is a lot more formal. So it occurs at the conclusion of instruction. So that could be after a unit, after the year, just depends. But that's much more of seeing where the students are, their growth and their progress. The first one is more of how you can adjust your teaching to make sure that they are understanding it. So formative is a little bit more on you. Summative is all on the students, so you're measuring that growth. But your students' summative should be very good. That's not great grammar, but very good if you've done a lot of formative. There was all day I was checking to make sure that students were understanding, so that when I gave that summative, they did well. They performed well. So making sure that you have both types, but especially formative all throughout. Here's another diagram. I thought it was really neat. One formative assessment that I loved was there are so many online quiz generators, and we would play those often in my room. If we had a few, like 7 minutes at the end of the day, we would go on Blooket, Kahoot, Quizzes, Gimkit. All of those are different types of formative assessment, and I would pick a topic, put it up there, and students would play. And I was able to see, okay, my students are not understanding this. And it was an easy way to check. But this is a great diagram to go back and forth if you're not understanding. Now, from those formative assessments and summative assessments, you need to take that information and not just, okay, I've checked that box. No, really first understand it, evaluate it, analyze it, and see what those patterns are. If my students were not if like 28% of them missed or only got number 4 correct, then I need to go look at that. And I need to see, is that a question error? Or are they not understanding that? Now, if it's county assessments, state assessments, those sort of things, well, I can't choose the questions. So that means my students were not understanding that. So I need to reteach that. So differentiate. Now I need to adjust my teaching and either reteach it, explain it, provide more practice so that my students are successful. Then monitor. So continue assessing and continue monitoring that progress to make sure that it's not just that fluke that, oh, they got it one day and then it's done. No, they need to make sure that you understand, that they understand it throughout the duration. So first, understand, look for those patterns, really analyze that data. Don't just take an assessment, done. Find those patterns. Where did they score not the best. Then differentiate. So reteach, figure out where they messed up, kind of those misconceptions, and then monitor. Keep giving them that practice so that they are successful. And a quote that I've seen throughout my teaching career is, without data, all we have is an opinion. So yes, we feel like there's a lot of data in schools and all of that, but use that to your advantage. Really hone in on that and see where your students are not doing as well. When y'all take quizzes, I look and see, ooh, did students not do as well on this question? Is that a bad question, or are they not understanding? So you have to do a lot of reflecting as the teacher to ensure that they are being successful. So as a teacher, you should look at your teaching probably more than they should be looking at their academics, which is kind of crazy. But today we looked at effective questioning and formative techniques. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I hope you have a great week.